The door closed softly behind us with a quiet click, sealing off the noise of the city street and the last echoes of the wedding party still going strong at the grand atrium in downtown Atlanta. We were finally alone in the foyer of my new condo. Our condo, as my mother, Denise, had reminded me for the last 3 months. I slipped off my classic white stilettos, and my feet gratefully met the cool hardwood floor. A whole day in those heels had been torture, but Mom had insisted on that exact style. "Aisha, you must look impeccable," she'd said when I tried to argue that I would prefer something more comfortable. Malik stood beside me, unbuttoning his flawlessly tailored suit. He was a tall, distinguished man of 38, with refined features and deep brown, attentive eyes. His hands were well kept, with long fingers that managed sign language so skillfully whenever he wanted to communicate something. Over the 6 months of our courtship, I had grown accustomed to his silence, to how he communicated with gestures, written notes, and glances. My mother always said it was a small price to pay for such a well-off and respectable husband. Welcome to Betty's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and gave my video a like. Now, let's jump into the story. I'm sure you'll enjoy it till the end. I turned to him, about to sign my offer of tea, as I had done every time we were together. But before I could raise my hands, Malik looked me straight in the eyes and said in a perfectly clear, deep voice, "Aisha, we need to talk. We need to have a serious conversation about what is really going on." In that split second, the world as I knew it crumbled into dust. My heart, which had been beating steadily through the chaos of the wedding day, now faltered, skipping several erratic beats before surging into a frantic rhythm that echoed in my ears like distant thunder. A chill spread through my veins, turning my hands numb and my knees weak, forcing me to grip the smooth, cold surface of the foyer wall just to stay upright. It felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving me gasping in a vacuum of disbelief. This man, my newlywed husband, the one I'd been led to believe was mute since a traumatic incident in his childhood, was speaking. His voice was rich and resonant, carrying a subtle, gravelly undertone that gave it a raw, almost hypnotic quality. But it was undeniably normal, as if he'd been using it every day of his life without a second thought. I opened my mouth to respond, to demand answers, to scream, anything, but the words lodged in my throat like stones, refusing to emerge. Shock had rendered me the silent one now. Malik took a cautious step forward, his well-manicured hand extending toward me in what might have been meant as a comforting gesture, but my body reacted on instant, recoiling as if his touch might burn. A fleeting expression crossed his deep brown eyes, something akin to regret, or perhaps guilt, but he didn't withdraw. Instead, he spoke again, his tone laced with what sounded like genuine remorse. "I'm so sorry, Aisha. I know this must feel like the ground is falling out from under you. It's a massive shock, and you have every right to it. Please, let's sit down in the living room and I'll explain everything from the beginning. You deserve to know the full truth about who I really am, why this deception was necessary, and exactly how your mother was involved in all of it." I didn't let him finish the sentence. A surge of raw panic propelled me away from him, my wedding gown swishing against the hardwood floor as I bolted toward the nearest door, the bathroom. I yanked it open with trembling fingers, slammed it shut behind me, and twisted the lock with a decisive click that echoed in the small space like a final judgment. My legs gave way then, and I sank onto the edge of the porcelain bathtub, my body shaking uncontrollably as hot tears streamed down my cheeks, blurring my vision and smearing the layers of carefully applied wedding makeup that had taken the stylist over an hour to perfect. The black mascara ran in dark rivulets, mixing with the shimmering highlighter on my cheekbones, creating a chaotic mask of betrayal and sorrow. Malik wasn't mute. For the entire 6 months of our courtship, he'd been fully capable of speech, hiding behind a veil of gestures, written notes, and those soulful glances I'd come to interpret as part of his condition. It had all been a lie, a meticulously orchestrated performance designed to fool me. And my mother? Denise, the woman who'd raised me, guided me through life's hardships, and promised to always have my back. How could she have been complicit in this? The thought twisted like a knife in my gut, sending fresh waves of nausea through me. My mind raced, a whirlwind of fragmented memories assaulting me. Every date where he'd signed simple phrases or scribbled quick notes on his ever-present notepad, every moment I'd caught that subtle sadness in his eyes and dismissed it as the lingering shadow of his supposed trauma. Had it all been fabricated? Every gentle touch, every shared laugh over a written joke, every time I'd felt a flicker of connection, were they nothing more than props in this elaborate act? From the other side of the door, I heard his footsteps approaching, soft and measured on the hardwood, followed by a gentle knock that seemed to reverberate through my very bones. "Aisha, please come out," he said, muffled, but clear, carrying a note of desperation that I hadn't heard before. "I understand why you're shocked, why you feel so deeply betrayed, and you're absolutely right to feel that way. I know I've shattered your trust, but just give me a chance to explain how this all came about. Let me tell you the real story, from the very beginning." I didn't respond. I couldn't. A painful spasm gripped my throat, making it hard to draw breath, let alone speak. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the mirror above the sink, the harsh bathroom light casting unforgiving shadows on my face. There I was, a 27-year-old bride in a luxurious white dress that hugged my figure like a second skin, its intricate lace and deeding costing more than my annual salary as a high school English teacher. My hair, styled into an elegant updo that had taken 3 painstaking hours at the salon, was now slightly disheveled from my frantic escape. My lips trembled, my eyes were red-rimmed and swollen, and the mascara streaks made me look like a tragic figure from one of the Gothic novels I taught my students. This wasn't the picture of wedded bliss I'd imagined. It was the wreckage of a happiness that had apparently been built on sand, shifting and unstable, never truly real to begin with. At 27 years old, I was acutely aware of how out of step I felt with the world around me. Most of my friends from college and high school had long since moved on to the next phases of life. Marriages, mortgages, baby showers, and family vacations documented in endless social media posts. They shared stories of weekend brunches with their spouses or play dates with their toddlers, their lives seeming so full and complete. Meanwhile, I was still sharing a modest 3-bedroom apartment with my mother in a quiet, unassuming neighborhood on the outskirts of Atlanta. By day, I threw myself into my role as a high school English teacher, finding joy in introducing my students to the timeless worlds of Jane Austen, F. Scott Fitzgerald, and Toni Morrison. There was something magical about watching a teenager's eyes light up as they connected with a character's struggles or triumphs, realizing that literature wasn't just words on a page, but a mirror to their own lives. It was fulfilling work, the kind that made me feel like I was making a difference, even if it didn't come with prestige or a hefty paycheck. But in the quiet evenings, when the apartment fell silent and Mom was absorbed in her evening news shows, I'd lie in bed dreaming of something more, a family of my own, a man who would see me for who I truly was, quirks and all, without trying to mold me into someone else's idea of perfection. No conditions, no demands, just genuine acceptance and love. My mother, Denise Holcomb, was a woman of unyielding strength and determination, qualities that had only intensified after my father's death 8 years earlier. Dad had been the soft-hearted counterbalance to her intensity, a gentle man who worked as a mechanic and always had time for a hug or a story. Their marriage, from what I remembered as a child, was filled with warmth. Lazy Sunday mornings with pancakes and laughter, evening walks where they'd hold hands and talk about everything and nothing. But when Dad fell ill suddenly, a rare and aggressive form of cancer that spread like wildfire, everything changed. The treatments were expensive, and our family's modest savings couldn't cover the best options. He passed away within months, leaving Mom a widow at 45, burdened with grief and what she later described as regret. In the years that followed, she became more domineering, more convinced that she alone knew what was best for me. She dictated my wardrobe, insisting on practical outfits that made me look respectable rather than the colorful, expressive clothes I preferred.
She approved my teaching career because it was stable, but often hinted I should aim for something more lucrative. Even my social life was under her scrutiny. Friends who didn't meet her standards of ambition or propriety were subtly discouraged. I'd tried to assert my independence over the years, small rebellions, like staying out late with Shayla or choosing my own books for the classroom curriculum, but each time I'd hit a wall of her disapproval. "You don't understand how the world works, Aisha," she'd say, shaking her head with that mix of love and frustration. "I'm only trying to protect you so you don't repeat my mistakes." Those mistakes, as she reframed them in her post-loss narrative, boiled down to one central error: marrying my father for love rather than financial security. In her revised history, their 23 years together were tainted by struggle, bills that piled up, dreams deferred because of limited means. She convinced herself that if Dad had been wealthier, more successful, he could have accessed better medical care and perhaps he'd still be alive today. It was a narrative that ignored the joy I'd witnessed, the deep affection that had defined their bond. But grief had a way of rewriting stories, and Mom's version had become her truth. It was about 6 months ago when she came home one evening with an unusual spark in her eyes, a rare excitement that immediately put me on edge. "Aisha, I found the perfect husband for you," she announced, setting down her purse with a flourish. I remember freezing in the middle of grading papers, my pen hovering over a student's essay on Pride and Prejudice. The perfect husband? It sounded so archaic, like something from one of those old novels where marriages were arranged for alliances rather than affection. His name was Malik Ellington, the son of an old family acquaintance she'd reconnected with through mutual friends. At 38, he was a successful entrepreneur, owner of a thriving chain of appliance stores across Georgia and beyond. Never married, highly educated at a top university, impeccably mannered, and financially secure in ways that Mom's eyes lit up like Christmas lights. And, she added, after a dramatic pause, as if dropping a bombshell, he's been mute since a childhood trauma. I must have looked startled, because she quickly waved it off. But that shouldn't bother you at all. He communicates beautifully through writing, and he's a master of sign language. The most important thing, Aisha, is that he's looking for a quiet, domestic wife who can create a comfortable home for him. Someone nurturing, someone like you. You're the perfect fit. I tried to protest, my voice rising in frustration as I argued that I wasn't interested in some arranged match, that I wanted to meet someone organically, to fall in love the way people did in real life, not through my mother's meddling. This isn't the 19th century, Mom. I want a connection that feels right, not something planned out like a business deal. But she was adamant, her strong personality in full force. She'd already arranged our first meeting, already envisioned the timeline. And deep down, if I was being brutally honest with myself, I was exhausted from the constant battle, exhausted from the loneliness that crept in during quiet moments, from the pitying looks of coworkers when they shared stories of family vacations or date nights, from endless questions from aunts and uncles at family gatherings. "When are you finally getting married, Aisha? You're not getting any younger." So I relented, telling myself it was just one meeting, that it couldn't hurt to see what happened. That first encounter took place at a quaint coffee shop in downtown Atlanta, the kind with exposed brick walls, the aroma of freshly ground beans hanging thick in the air, and soft jazz playing in the background. I arrived early, my nerves a tangled knot in my stomach, twisting a paper napkin into shreds. As I waited, then he walked in, tall and distinguished, his refined features complemented by a sharp suit that fit him like it was custom made. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and he offered a warm, sincere smile that sent an unexpected flutter through my chest like a bird taking flight after being caged too long. He approached my table with a gallant bow of his head, signing a polite greeting that I clumsily returned, my hands fumbling the signs I'd practiced from an online tutorial. I felt awkward, unsure how to navigate a conversation with someone who couldn't speak, but Malik seemed to sense my discomfort immediately. He pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook and a sleek pen from his pocket, writing in neat, legible handwriting. "Please don't hesitate to speak aloud. I'm an excellent lip reader and will understand every word. I'll respond with notes or gestures." Relief washed over me, and the conversation began to flow more easily than I had anticipated. He asked thoughtful questions about my job as a teacher, my favorite books, and my hobbies, his pen gliding across the paper with quick, confident strokes. I opened up about my passion for literature, how I loved seeing my students discover the power of stories to reflect their own experiences, the way a shy girl might find her voice through Scout in Talking a Mockingbird, or a troubled boy connect with Holden's angst in The Catcher in the Rye. He watched my lips intently, his deep brown eyes reflecting genuine interest, and then he wrote, "I've always admired teachers. It's a noble profession. You shape the future, helping children find their paths in a complicated world." His words made me blush. In a society that often viewed teaching as a fallback career, especially for women, his respect felt like a balm on old wounds. Few people took my work seriously, dismissing it as a way to pass time until real life began. But Malik's note made me feel seen, valued for my contributions, rather than my marital status.
We met again and again, each date building on the last. Malik took me to upscale restaurants where the candlelight danced on crystal glasses and the menus featured dishes I'd only read about in food blogs. We attended theater productions where he'd pass me notes during intermissions, sharing his thoughts on the plot or characters, his handwriting always precise and insightful. We strolled through art exhibitions, pausing before paintings that sparked discussions, me speaking aloud about the emotions they evoked, him responding with written analyses that revealed his cultured mind. He was attentive in ways that surprised me, remembering small details I'd mentioned in passing. If I casually said I loved white roses during one of our early coffee dates, a bouquet of them would appear at our next meeting, their petals soft and fragrant, tied with a simple ribbon. If I expressed interest in a particular movie, he'd secure tickets for the best seats, complete with popcorn and my favorite soda. It was thoughtful, almost romantic, and yet something was missing. Mom, of course, was ecstatic, repeating her praises like a broken record every time I returned home from a date. "See, Aisha, I told you he was perfect. He's financially secure, respectable, and he treats you like a queen. What more could you possibly need for happiness?" I didn't know how to answer her. On one hand, Malik was genuinely pleasant, smart, well-read, with a quiet humor that shone through his notes. We found common ground in our love for classic literature. He'd write about his favorite Dostoevsky novels, and I'd respond with insights from my teaching experiences. On the other hand, there was an absence of that electric spark, the kind of magic you read about in romance novels where hearts race and worlds collide. Maybe it was the arranged nature of it all, or perhaps it was just my fear of committing after so many years of independence. But a subtle resistance lingered in my heart, like a whisper warning me not to settle. After 3 months of dating, the proposal came during one of our regular walks in Piedmont Park, the air thick with the scent of blooming flowers and the distant hum of city traffic. We were strolling along a shaded path, the leaves rustling overhead, when Malik suddenly stopped, dropped to one knee, and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside gleamed a ring with a large diamond that caught the sunlight like a prism, sparkling with promise. He handed me a note, his handwriting steady despite the moment. "Aisha, you make me happy in ways I'm never expected. Be my wife." I stared at the ring, then at him, a chaos of thoughts spinning in my head like a storm. Did I love this man? Was I ready to tie my life to his? Did I want to spend every day waking up beside him, building a future together? His eyes were filled with hope, a vulnerability I'd rarely seen in his silent demeanor, and I remembered Mom's words from our many conversations.
Love will come with time, Aisha. The most important things are respect, care, and stability. Passionate love is for books. Real life is about security and partnership. Maybe she was right. Maybe the butterflies and fireworks were fairy tales, and what mattered was a solid foundation, a man who was reliable and kind. Yes, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the park's ambient sounds. Malik's face lit up with joy. He slipped the ring onto my finger, its weight foreign and heavy, then pulled me into a hug. I felt his strong, steady rhythm of his heart against my chest, a beat that should have calmed me, reassured me that this was the right choice. But instead, a strange emptiness settled in my core, like a void that no amount of logic could fill.
The next 3 months flew by in a whirlwind of wedding preparations, with Mom taking charge like a general leading a campaign. She chose the grand ballroom for the reception, compiled the guest list, which ballooned to 120 people, many of whom I didn't even know, ordered the dress from a high-end boutique, selected the flowers, white roses, of course, to match my preferences, and handled every detail down to the color of the napkins. I felt like an outsider in my own wedding, observing the frenzy from a distance rather than participating. Mom, maybe we could do something more modest, I suggested one day when she showed me the eye-watering estimate for the reception. We don't need that many guests or such extravagance. She waved me off with a laugh. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. You deserve to remember this day forever. Besides, Malik insists on a proper celebration. He wants to show the world what a beautiful bride he has. Malik, for his part, didn't object to any of her decisions. Whenever I tried to discuss details with him via sign or note, he'd simply nod and write, "I trust your taste completely." But it wasn't my taste. It was Mom's, and that realization irritated me more with each passing day, building like a pressure cooker ready to explode. A week before the wedding, the dam broke. I was in my room, trying on yet another gown Mom had insisted on, when the emotions overwhelmed me. Tears came in heaving sobs, shaking my body and smearing my makeup. I didn't understand what was happening. I should have been excited, buzzing with anticipation for my new life. Instead, I felt only fear, confusion, and a deep-seated doubt that gnawed at my insides. Mom walked in and stopped dead, her face a mask of concern. "Aisha, what's wrong? Why are you crying like this?" Her voice was soft, genuine worry lacing every word. I don't know, Mom," I sobbed, my words choked and broken. "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I'm not sure if I love Malik. I'm not sure if I even want to get married at all." She sat beside me on the bed, wrapping her arms around me in a comforting embrace that reminded me of childhood nights when she'd soothe my fears after a nightmare. "Sweetheart, this is just pre-wedding jitters. Every bride goes through it. It's completely normal. Malik is a wonderful man. He'll take care of you, provide stability, and protect you from a world's harshness. And love will come with time, once you're living together, building a home, maybe even starting a family." "But what if it doesn't come?" I whispered, my voice small and vulnerable. "What if I never feel that way about him?" Mom sighed, stroking my hair gently. "Aisha, I lived with your father for 23 years. You know what I regret most? That we were so wrapped up in our love for each other that we forgot about the practical things, saving money, planning for the future, taking care of our health. When he got sick, we didn't have the means for the best treatment, the kind that might have made a difference. If I had chosen a husband who was more financially secure, perhaps things would have turned out differently. Perhaps your father would still be here with us." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I never thought of it that way before. In my mind, Dad's death was a tragic accident, a swift illness that no one could have foreseen or stopped. "Mom, that wasn't your fault, or Dad's. It just happened. Life is unpredictable." She shook her head, her eyes distant as if reliving those painful months. "Maybe, but I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did. Malik will give you everything you need. You'll never have to worry about money or security again, and that's more important than romantic feelings, which fade away eventually anyway." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to argue, to defend the beauty of the love she'd shared with Dad, but another part wondered if she was right. Maybe I had read too many romance novels, expecting an impossible fairy tale from life. Maybe stability and care were the true pillars of happiness, not the butterflies in the stomach or the racing heart upon seeing the one you love. The wedding day arrived under a canopy of sunny skies and warm breezes.
the kind of weather that felt like a good omen if you believed in such things. I woke up early, unarrested after a night of troubled dreams where I wandered endless hallways searching for something I couldn't name. The house had transformed into a bustling anthill, Mom issuing last-minute instructions to the caterers, and the florist and the makeup artist and hairstylist working their magic to turn me into a vision of bridal perfection. My bridesmaids chattering excitedly about their outfits and the handsome groomsmen. Shayla, my best friend since high school, and the only one who knew the full extent of my doubts and fears, helped me into the gown, her fingers deftly fastening the countless buttons down the back. Aisha, if you're not sure about this, it's not too late to call it off. You don't have to go through with it just because everyone expects you to. I shook my head, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. No, it's fine. I'm just nervous, like all brides are supposed to be. She looked at me intently, her brow furrowed. Are you absolutely sure you want this? Because a wedding isn't just a beautiful dress and a party. It's a decision for life, a commitment that changes everything. I know, I replied, turning to face the reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman staring back was stunning. Snow-white gown flowing like a cascade of silk, neat hairstyle pin with delicate pearls, flawless makeup enhancing my features. But there was no joy in her eyes, only a quiet resignation, an acceptance of the path laid out before her. I'd made my decision. Malik was a good man, kind and stable. We would be happy, or at least content.
That's what I told myself. The ceremony at City Hall passed in a surreal blur, like watching a movie of someone else's life. I remember standing before the officiant, the room filled with the scent of fresh flowers and the murmur of guests, saying I do in a voice that sounded distant even to my own ears. Malik slipped the wedding band onto my finger, its cool metal a stark contrast to the warmth of his skin, and we shared our first kiss as husband and wife under a wave of applause. His lips were soft and gentle, the kiss chaste and appropriate, but I felt nothing, no spark, no rush of emotion, just a strange detachment, as if it were happening to another woman entirely. The reception at the hotel ballroom was a lavish affair, every detail screaming opulence. Snow-white tablecloths adorned with crystal vases of fresh flowers, exquisite dishes prepared by a renowned chef, expensive champagne flowing freely, and 120 guests mingling in their finest attire. Most of them were strangers to me. Malik's extended relatives, his business partners, Mom's old acquaintances from her social clubs. Everyone smiled, congratulated us, and wished us a lifetime of happiness, their words blending into a cacophony of well wishes. Malik sat beside me at the head table, holding my hand under the tablecloth, occasionally leaning over to write something on a small notepad, compliments on my beauty, gentle words of affection that were supposed to make my heart swell. But instead, I felt only a profound weariness, a desire for the night to end so I could escape the performance. Mom, on the other hand, looked happier than I'd seen her in years, flitting from table to table like a social butterfly, accepting congratulations and boasting about her wonderful son-in-law. Her eyes shone with triumph, as if she'd just won a long-fought battle, securing my future in the way she deemed best. "Your mother is so happy," Malik wrote at one point, noticing my gaze lingering on her. "She genuinely cares about your happiness." I nodded, unable to answer aloud, wondering silently if it was my happiness she cared about or her own peace of mind, knowing that I'd been settled according to her plan. I didn't have the answer to that question, and in that moment, I wasn't sure I wanted it. The evening seemed to stretch on forever, a marathon of dancing, toasts, and traditional wedding games that had the guests laughing and cheering. I smiled through it all, thanking people for their kind words, posing for photos with a practiced grin. During our first dance as husband and wife, Malik led me around the floor to a romantic song, his hands firm but not possessive on my waist, treating me as if I were a fragile porcelain doll in need of protection. Finally, around 11 p.m., the reception began to wind down. Guests gradually departed, hugging us and urging us to give your mother some grandchildren soon. Mom kissed me repeatedly, whispering in my ear, "You made the right choice, my daughter. Be happy now." Then she hugged Malik, murmuring something to him that I couldn't hear, and he nodded in response. We climbed into the luxurious car Malik had hired for the occasion, the driver wishing us well as he pulled away from the hotel. The drive to the condo took about 20 minutes, the city lights blurring past the windows in a streak of neon. We rode in silence, Malik staring thoughtfully out his window, biting his lip in a way that suggested his mind was elsewhere, while I looked down at my hands, still clad in white gloves, fiddling with the ring that felt foreign and uncomfortable on my finger. Finally, we arrived at the high-rise building, the driver opening the door with another round of congratulations. Malik took my arm gently, and we entered the lobby. The brand-new elevator whisked us smoothly to the 18th floor. He unlocked the door with a set of shiny keys, and we stepped inside. The condo was spacious and bright, with a large living room featuring floor-to-ceiling windows offering stunning views of the Atlanta skyline, a modern kitchen equipped with top-of-the-line appliances, and 2 bedrooms furnished in a tasteful contemporary style. Everything looked perfect, like a spread from an interior design magazine, expensive, thoughtful, and utterly impersonal. I slipped off my shoes again, my feet sighing of relief against the cool hardwood as Malik closed the door behind us, sealing us in the silence of what was now supposed to be our home. And then he spoke, that deep, slightly gravelly voice cutting through the quiet like a knife, making my heart freeze and then race at a frantic pace. Now I sat locked in the bathroom, listening to him knock again, his voice pleading through the door. "Aisha, please. I know you feel betrayed, and you're right to, but listen to me. Hear me out, and then you can decide what to do next. I won't hold you if you want to leave, but give me this chance to explain." I looked at my reflection one last time, the smeared mascara, the red eyes, the trembling lips. Not a happy bride, but the victim of an elaborate hoax. Taking a deep breath, I stood, splashed cold water on my face to wash away the tears, dried off with a fluffy towel that smelled of fresh laundry, and slowly turned the key in the lock. The door creaked open, and there he was, leaning against the wall in the hallway, still in his wedding suit but with the jacket removed and the top buttons of his shirt undone, revealing a hint of his chest. Seeing me, he straightened up and took a tentative step forward. "Thank you for coming out," he said softly, his voice low and careful. "Let's go into the living room and sit down. This is going to be a long talk, I owe you that much." I nodded silently and walked past him, my gown rustling, settling on the edge of the new leather sofa that still had that fresh from the store smell. Malik sat in the armchair opposite me, not next to me, as if he understood I needed physical distance to match the emotional chasm between us. He was silent for a long moment, his hands clasped in his lap, choosing his words with care. Then he took a deep breath and began to speak. And what I heard over the next 30 minutes completely overturned my understanding of the last 6 months, of who Malik truly was, and what role my mother had played in it all. "I am not mute, Aisha," he began, his voice steady, but his eyes avoiding mine at first. "I never have been. I was born and raised in a regular family in the suburbs of Atlanta, went to public schools, got my business degree from Georgia State. Yes, I own the chain of appliance stores. That part is true. But everything else you've been told about me, everything you've believed, is a carefully constructed story, a facade I put up for reasons that seemed necessary at the time." I stared at him, unable to believe my ears, my mind struggling to process the casual way he delivered this bombshell, as if he were discussing the weather or a recent movie. 2 years ago, I was married. Her name was Chloe. We were together for 5 years, and I loved her deeply. I thought we had a solid life, a future planned out. But it turned out she'd been seeing another man for over a year. When I found out, by accident, seeing a text on her phone, she didn't even try to deny it. She just packed her bags and left, saying I was too boring, too predictable, and that the other guy made her feel alive in ways I never could. He paused, and I saw the pain in his eyes, a genuine, deep-seated hurt that spoke of betrayal's lasting scars. It was the first time I'd seen him so vulnerable, without the mask of silence to hide behind. The divorce was hell. She demanded half the business, half our assets, and she got it all because I was a fool who believed in love and didn't insist on a prenuptial agreement. After that, I swore to myself I'd never marry for love again. Next time, I'd be smarter, more calculating, more protected. And that's when you decided to pretend to be mute. I burst out, my voice strange and raspy from the tears. To test if a woman would marry you for your money, not for your charm or your words. Malik shook his head, finally meeting my gaze. Not exactly. The idea wasn't mine alone. It was a joint plan with your mother. I froze, the words hitting me like ice water. Mom didn't just know, she was the initiator. Malik stood up, walked to the window, and stood looking out at the twinkling city lights, his back to me as if the confession was too heavy to face me directly. Denise Holcomb is my godmother. We've known each other since I was a child. Our families were close back then, though we lost touch for many years as life pulled us in different directions. But after my divorce, she heard about what happened through mutual friends and reached out. She said she wanted to help, to see me happy again. I listened, my mind reeling, unable to wrap my head around this revelation. Mom had never mentioned being her godmother, never hinted at any prior connection. She had presented him as the son of an old acquaintance, nothing more. She told me about you, Malik continued, his voice echoing slightly off the glass. That you were a teacher, smart, kind, domestic, not spoiled or chasing after money, and that you valued real principles over superficial things. She suggested we meet, that you might be the kind of woman who could help me heal. But why pretend to be mute? I asked, my confusion turning to anger. If she spoke so highly of me, why all the lies, the deception? Malik turned around, in his expression a mix of sorrow and resolve. Because I was afraid, Aisha. Terrified of being fooled again, of trusting the wrong person and ending up broken. Denise suggested the plan. She said, if Aisha agrees to marry you, even though you can't speak, it will prove she's not superficial, that she's interested in the man inside, not the ability to deliver pretty speeches or promises. So it was a test, I said, my voice rising as anger boiled up inside me like a pot left too long on the stove. You and Mom decided to test me like some kind of litmus paper to see if I was good enough for you. Aisha, it wasn't like that, Malik said, taking a step toward me, his hands open in a gesture of appeal. I never wanted to hurt you, but after what I'd been through with Chloe, I simply couldn't trust a woman who might fall in love with my words or my promises. I wanted to find someone who would accept me as I was, without any pretense. But you created the pretense yourself. I leapt up from the sofa, my gown billowing around me. You pretended to be someone entirely. How can I know who you really are if you've been lying to me since our very first date? Malik was silent for a moment, unable to find the words to counter me, and in that silence, I suddenly realized something else, something even more devastating. Wait, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Mom, my own mother. She insisted on this marriage, convincing me you were perfect. She said love would come with time, that stability was what mattered. She manipulated me. She arranged my entire life without my consent. Malik didn't answer, but the confirmation was there, in his eyes, plain as day. And then I felt something break inside me, not just anger or hurt, but something deeper, more painful, the raw sting of betrayal by the person I'd trusted my entire life. Get out, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm raging within. I don't care where you go, to another room, to friends, to a hotel, but right now, I don't want to see you. I can't. He hesitated, his face a mask of regret. Aisha, I truly regret this. I know I acted wrongly, but give me a chance to make it right. Get out. I raised my voice and he flinched as if slapped. Right now, immediately. He nodded, his shoulders slumping, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back one last time. I'll be at my brother's place. Here's his number in case you decide to talk. He placed a piece of paper on the table by the door.
And Aisha, please forgive me. Truly forgive me. The door closed behind me with a soft click, mirroring the one that had started this nightmare. And I was left alone in this perfect condo he'd furnished for our life together, a life built on a foundation of lies.
I sank onto the sofa, hugging my knees to my chest, and let the tears come in full force. I cried for everything. The lost illusions of a happy marriage, the trust that had been so callously betrayed, the maternal love that had turned out to be so strangely distorted and controlling. I cried because I didn't know who I was anymore. A wife or a deceived fool who'd been arranged like a pawn in someone else's game. I don't know how much time passed, maybe an hour, maybe more, before the tears finally subsided, leaving me exhausted and hollow. When they stopped, I got up, went back to the bathroom, washed my face again, and peeled off the wedding dress, letting it pool on the floor like a discarded skin. In the bedroom closet, I found a simple nightgown. Malik had apparently thought of everything, stocking the place with clothes in my size. I changed, laid down on the bed, pulled the blanket over me, and stared at the ceiling, the smooth white surface mocking my turmoil. Thoughts tormented me, giving me no rest. What should I do now? Forgive him? But how could I forgive such a profound deception? Leave? But where would I go? Back to Mom, who was part of this twisted plan? The phone on the nightstand suddenly rang, jolting me from my reverie. I flinched, picking it up to see Mom's name on the screen. Of course she was calling, probably to check on her perfect plan, to see how the first night of marriage was going. I stared at the screen for a long time, the ringing insistent, then hit the decline button. I couldn't talk to her now. I didn't know what to say or how to keep from screaming. The phone rang again almost immediately. I declined it once more. Then a text message popped up. Aisha, why aren't you picking up? Is everything okay? Please call me. I hurled the phone onto the bed and covered my face with my hands. No, Mom, I muttered to the empty room. Nothing is okay. Your perfect plan fell apart because you forgot one tiny detail. I am not a thing to be arranged and forgotten. I'm a living person with feelings, with a right to the truth, and a right to my own life. Sleep evaded me that night. I tossed and turned, trying to find a comfortable position on the unfamiliar mattress, but my thoughts gave me no peace. I recalled all my dates with Malik in vivid detail. The first coffee shop meeting where his smile had disarmed me, the evenings at restaurants where he'd written funny observations about the other patrons, making me laugh despite the silence. Every gesture, every note, every look. Had it all been an act? Every smile a calculated move? But at the same time, I remembered his eyes, so warm and attentive, in which I thought I saw what I thought was sincerity. I recalled his care, his attention to detail, like the time he'd noticed I was cold during a park walk and draped his jacket over my shoulders without a word. Just a gentle sign for better? Was all of that pretense too? Or did he genuinely have some feelings for me? No, I whispered into the darkness of the room, the word hanging in the air like a condemnation. How could he have feelings for someone he deceived from the very first meeting? Just before dawn, I finally fell into a restless sleep, plagued by dreams of the wedding. In them, all the guests were faceless shadows, whispering secrets I couldn't hear, and Malik stood at the altar with his mouth sealed shut with thick, bloody thread. I tried to scream, to tell everyone that this was wrong, that it was all a lie, but no sound escaped my throat, leaving me voiceless and trapped. I woke up to a persistent knocking at the door, the bright sunlight streaming through the windows, indicating it was well past noon. I got up, my body aching from the emotional toll, slipped on a robe I found in the closet, and shuffled to the door, still groggy and disoriented from the fragmented sleep. Peering through the peephole, I saw Mom standing there, grocery bags in hand, her face etched with worry. I hesitated, debating whether to open the door or pretend I wasn't home, but she knocked again, more insistently, and I realized she wouldn't leave until we talked.
With a sigh, I unlocked the door and let her in. She bustled inside, setting the bags on the floor, and immediately pulled me into a hug, her familiar scent of lavender perfume enveloping me. Aisha, what happened? You look terrible. Pale, exhausted. Why weren't you answering my calls? Where is Malik? I pulled away gently and walked into the kitchen, turning on the kettle for tea as a way to occupy my hands and avoid her gaze. Mom followed, her face full of anxiety. Aisha, you're scaring me. Tell me what happened. Did something go wrong last night? I turned to her then, and there must have been something in my eyes, cold fury, mixed with deep hurt, that made her take a step back. Malik can speak, I said in an even voice, though inside I was screaming. He was never mute. He was pretending all this time, and you knew it from the beginning. Mom's face went pale, as a sheet, then flushed red with what looked like both guilt and defensiveness. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it, struggling for words. Is it true? I asked, though I already knew the answer from her reaction. Were you involved in this deception? Did you manipulate me, arrange my life without ever asking for my consent? Mom leaned against the kitchen counter for support, running her hand over her face as if to wipe away the evidence of her complicity. Aisha, I can explain everything. Please just sit down and let me talk.
Explain? I echoed, my voice rising as I sat across from her at the small kitchen table. Explain why my own mother decided she had the right to control my life like I was a child. Why didn't you tell me the truth about Malik? Why were you part of this whole production? Mom was silent for a long time, her eyes fixed on the window where the afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, casting striped shadows on the floor. Then she sighed deeply and began to speak, her voice trembling at first but gaining strength as she went. Malik is my godson. I knew his parents before he was even born. We were close friends, part of the same church community, sharing holidays and milestones. But life took us in different directions. They moved for work, and we lost touch. When he got divorced and I found out what he'd gone through, how he'd been betrayed by that woman, Chloe, I felt so sorry for him. He's such a good boy, always hardworking, honest, and respectable. And I thought, she trailed off, choosing her words carefully. You thought he was the perfect match for me, I finished for her, my tone bitter. And you decided to orchestrate our lives without asking what either of us wanted. Aisha, I meant well, Mom said, looking at me with a pleading gaze that made my heart ache despite my anger. You've been alone for so long. I saw how you suffered, how lonely you were, even if you tried to hide it. The way you'd come home from work and bury yourself in books, avoiding social events because you didn't have a partner. I knew Malik from his childhood. I knew he was a good man, that he would take care of you and give you everything you needed to be happy. Did I want to harm you? No, absolutely not. You're my daughter, my only child. I just wanted to see you secure, protected from the pains I've known. But you decided for me, I countered, pounding the table lightly with my fist to emphasize my point. You were part of a lie that was supposed to be the foundation of my marriage. What kind of relationship can be built on a lie like that? Mom shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. It wasn't a lie. Not entirely. Malik truly was looking for a wife, someone to start a family with. And this mute experiment was necessary for him to make sure you were marrying him for the right reasons, not for pretty words or empty promises, but because you saw the person inside. Is that so bad in a world full of superficial relationships? Isn't that what we all want? Someone who loves us for who we are? Yes, Mom, I said, my voice cracking. Yes, it's bad, because the foundation of any relationship is trust and honesty, and you two started with deception. How can I ever trust him now? How can I trust you? How can I know this isn't just another lie, another manipulation to keep me in line? Mom stood up, came over to me, and tried to hug me, but I pulled away, not ready for her touch. Don't, I said firmly. I don't want your hugs right now. I want the truth, the whole truth about what happened and what you planned. Mom sighed, returning to her chair with a defeated slump. Fine, I'll tell you everything. No more secrets.
And she did. She told me how Malik had come to her after the divorce, broken and disillusioned, having lost faith in love and women, how she'd offered to introduce him to me, describing how good, reliable, and domestic I was, the kind of woman who valued home and heart over glamour. That Malik had agreed to meet but asked for time to be sure I wasn't like his ex-wife, someone who might use him for his success and then discard him. The idea for the mutinous was his, Mom admitted, born from his fear. He said he wanted to see how a woman would react to a man who couldn't speak. Would she be patient, kind, understanding? Or would she run away at the first sign of difficulty? And I agreed because I also wanted to be sure he was right for you, that he wouldn't hurt you or leave you like Chloe left him. So it was a test for both of us. I incredulously said, "You were testing him while he tested me." Mom nodded, her hands twisting a napkin in her lap. "Yes, and when I saw how he treated you during those dates, how caring and attentive he was, how he remembered every little thing you said, I knew he was truly a good person, that you would be happy with him. But you forgot to ask what I thought," I said bitterly, the words teasing like ash in my mouth. "You forgot that I have a right to choose, a right to the truth." "I thought it would be better this way," Mom said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "I thought if you found the truth after the wedding, when you were already together and building a life, you would forgive him and understand it was for your own good." I looked at her, my mother, the woman I loved and relied on all my life, and felt a strange mix of pity and anger. Pity because I could see she truly believed she was doing the right thing, driven by her own scars from losing Dad. Anger because she didn't see me as an adult capable of making her own decisions, of navigating her own path. "Mom, I don't know if I can forgive you," I finally said, my voice steady but my heart heavy. "Not now, maybe with time, but right now I need to figure out my own feelings, to understand what I want to do next, and for that, I need to be alone." Mom nodded, wiping the tears that had begun to stream down her cheeks. "I understand. Forgive me, Aisha. I truly wanted the best for you." She stood up, picked up her bag, and turned back at the threshold. "If you decide to talk, I'm always here. I love you, my daughter." After she left, I was alone again in the condo, the silence pressing in like a weight. I sat on the sofa, hugged my knees, and tried to sort through the tangle of emotions. Divorce. File for an annulment since the marriage was based on fraud. That seemed like the logical decision, the clean break. But something inside me resisted, a small voice whispering that perhaps there was more to this, that Malik's eyes held genuine emotion during our time together. Maybe it was because I remembered the hope in his gaze when he asked for forgiveness. Maybe it was because I realized he, too, was a victim in this situation, a victim of his ex-wife's betrayal, a victim of the fear that had driven him to such extremes. "But that doesn't excuse the lie," I said aloud to the empty room, as if trying to convince myself of the words.
I spent the whole day in the condo, not leaving, not answering any calls or texts. I ate what I found in the refrigerator, some fresh fruit and yogurt that Malik must have stocked, stared out the window at the bustling city below, and tried to read a book from the shelf, but the words swam on the page, unable to hold my attention. Toward evening, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was my friend Shayla. I opened the door, and she immediately pulled me into a tight hug, her familiar energy a comfort in the storm. "Aisha, your mom called me. She said you were in trouble and that I should check on you. What happened? Tell me everything." I let her in, and we sat on the sofa, the same one where Malik had confessed just hours earlier. I told her the whole story, from the moment he spoke to the revelations about Mom's involvement. Shayla listened, her eyes widening in astonishment, occasionally interrupting with gasps or questions. When I finished, she was silent for a long time, processing the information. "God, Aisha, that's just insane," she finally breathed out. "They lied to you from the very beginning, played with your life like it was a game. What are you going to do now? Does he expect you to just forgive everything and live happily ever after, as if nothing happened?" I shrugged, feeling the weight of exhaustion. "I don't know what he expects. He went to his brother's place yesterday when I asked him to leave.
He said he'd wait for me to decide. Shayla took my hand, her grip firm and reassuring. What do you want? Not your mother, not Malik, you. What are you feeling right now? I thought about it, really thought about it for the first time since the revelation. What was I feeling? Anger, yes. A burning rage at the deception. Hurt, definitely. A deep wound from the betrayal. Disappointment in Mom, in Malik, in myself for not seeing the signs. But there was something else too. Something I didn't want to admit even to myself. I don't know, I confessed. I'm angry at him and I'm angry at Mom, but at the same time, I remember our dates, how attentive and caring he was. And I wonder if that was all just a performance or if there was something real there, something worth exploring. Shyla squeezed my hand tighter. Aisha, only you can decide what to do next. But know that whatever you choose, I'll be right here supporting you. If you want a divorce, I'll help you find a lawyer and pack your bags. If you want to give him a chance, I'll support that too. The main thing is that it has to be your decision, not one forced on you by someone else. Her words warmed me, a reminder that at least one person in my life wasn't trying to manipulate or control me. Thank you, Shayla. Truly, thank you. We spent the whole evening together, talking about everything and nothing, trying to distract from the heaviness of the situation. Shyla made dinner with what she found in the fridge, a simple pasta dish with vegetables and sauce, and we ate it like it was just a normal girls' night, laughing over old memories from high school and gossiping about mutual friends. It was a brief respite, a bubble of normalcy in the chaos. When Shyla left, hugging me goodbye and promising to check in the next day, I was alone with my thoughts again. I picked up the phone, looked at the piece of paper with Malik's brother's number that he had left. I stared at the digits for a long time, my finger hovering over the screen, trying to decide whether to call or not. Give him a chance to explain completely, Shyla's was echoed in my head. Hear his full story and then decide. Taking a deep breath, I dialed the number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. I was about to hang up when I heard his voice, familiar now, but still jarring. Aisha? There was a mix of hope and fear in his tone. Yes, it's me, I said, my voice calmer than I expected. I need you to come home. We need to talk, really talk, without secrets or omissions. I'll be there right away, he answered quickly, relief evident. I'll be there in under 20 minutes. I hung up and went to the bathroom to wash my face and tidy up a bit. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Pale face, dark circles under my eyes, but a look of determination that hadn't been there before. I was ready to hear the whole truth and then decide if this marriage, which had started with a lie, had any future at all. Malik arrived in 17 minutes as promised. I let him in, and we sat in the living room again, him in the armchair, me on the sofa. There was distance between us, but no longer the yawning abyss there had been yesterday. Talk. Everything from the very beginning, no sugarcoating. He nodded and began, his voice steady as he delved into his past.
He told me about his marriage to Chloe in more detail than before, how they met in college, fallen in love quickly, and built what he thought was a perfect life. I loved her with everything I had, he said, his eyes distant. We planned trips, talked about kids, the whole future. But then I saw that message on her phone. Innocent at first, but it led to the truth. She'd been seeing him for over a year. And when I confronted her, she didn't even apologize. She just said I was too routine, too safe, and she needed excitement. The divorce was messy, he explained, with lawyers battling over assets, leaving him financially and emotionally drained. I had to start over, loans, long hours, rebuilding the business from scratch. When he was finally stable, the fear remained. That's when I turned to Denise, my godmother. I complained about life, my fears, and she offered to introduce us. Yes, I continued for him. She told you about me. Smart, kind, not money hungry. Exactly, he said. But the fear was too strong. I proposed the mute plan to see how you'd react. Denise was against it at first, but she agreed, understanding my concerns. He looked up, meeting my eyes. The strangest thing? I didn't expect to fall for you. I thought it would be a transaction. Me getting a loyal wife, you getting security. But as we dated, I saw your patience, your kindness. You taught me signs, even though I knew them. You talked for hours, seeing me as a person, not an invalid. It moved me. He stood, respecting my space. Aisha, I know I started wrong. The deception is unforgivable, but my attention, care, all real. The only lie was the silence. I searched his face for deceit. How can I believe you? 6 months of lies. He knelt, taking my hands. I don't know how to prove it, but I'm willing to try. Start over, honestly. I admitted, I need time. He nodded. Take it. I'll wait. He left, promising no pressure. The next few days were a blur of contemplation. I stayed in, ignoring Mom's calls, Shayla visiting with food and support. Malik sent daily white roses, no notes, just reminders. On the 5th day, I walked, spotting Malik afar, tired, human. It clicked. He was scarred, not evil. Evening, I called. Come over. We talked. I proposed restarting. On my terms, no secrets. He agreed. Evenings became honest shares. His childhood, business struggles, my doubts, dreams. Anger subsided. Met Mom, forgiven, but respect me. A month later, park walk. Do we have a chance? I want to try. We hugged, hope ignited. Cohabiting was strange. Roommates first. Chloe's visit stirred jealousy. Her regrets, his hesitation hurt. Guilt, he explained. Text ignored, blocked her. Photos arrived. Her pregnancy confession brought closure. Helped her transparently. Family meet revealed his growth. Mom's words, second chance. I love you, deepened us. Pregnancy shocked from wedding night. Joy followed. Nova's birth united us. Paris renewal affirmed love. Years later, with Nova, we've built true happiness from lies. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.